Okay, well, hi everybody. Welcome to another Training into Practice video. My name is Dr. Bill Geary, and I am one of the hosts of Coalition Evaluation YouTube channel. Today we're going to do the second part in our evidence-based programming offering for you. In the first part, we talked a little bit about what evidence-based programs are. I offered some examples of evidence-based lists, and we talked about why it's important to use them. Today I want to show you how easy it is to walk through one. So we're going to focus on the NREPP, which is one of the lists that we talked about in the previous video, and we're going to do a screen walkthrough. So let's get started.
Okay, so here we are at the NREPP website. Found this by going just to samhsa.gov, and then if you go under Programs and Campaigns, National Registry of Evidence-Based Programs and Practices. So this is their main site, and we're going to, of course, be looking to find an intervention. We can read a little bit about NREPP here. We can look at resources that might help you make decisions about what you want to implement here. Searching here, which we'll do in a minute, and then review and submissions takes you through the process by which a strategy gets listed by NREPP. So there are three things you probably want to know, or at least minimal information that you want to know before you start this process. And the first is you probably need to know what behavior to address. Again, since we're on NREPP, we know that it will involve substance abuse or mental health issues. We want to know what the audience for the program is, and we're going to walk through that a little bit. What are the age groups and any other criteria you may have for demographic information? And you're going to want to know the setting. Where do you want the program to occur? So let's start walking through this. Now you see we can jump right to a keyword search, or we can go right to view all interventions, but we want to do a search, so we're going to find an intervention. And you can see again, we have a keyword search here. Again, we have a view all button here. And then down here are all the filters that we can use to specifically identify the conditions and the audiences that we are interested in. Notice that there are asterisks next to some of the filters, including outcome categories, special populations, settings, implementation, dissemination, and outcome rating. And notice that here it identifies that these apply to newly reviewed programs only, which means that if you click those or you make decisions about these categories, they will only be reflected in newly reviewed programs, which we're going to discuss in a moment. So let's start with some of these basic designations. Under program type, you can see that there is a list of program types, and for our purposes, we're going to be interested in substance use disorder prevention. Right? That's what we're looking at. In terms of ages, we're going to focus on childhood. You can see we can use various age groups for youth and adults in here, or we could just say information is not provided in the research. Under outcome categories, again, we are interested primarily in substance use, though we could include mental health and wellness. I'm not going to do that because I want to make sure that the list is large enough for us to get some good examples. But I was just working with a group who was primarily interested in wellness in addition to substance use. Race ethnicity is one of those categories where we can start to define specific demographic information that's included in the research. So if they don't talk about race or ethnicity in the research as one of the variables, then if you click one of these buttons, you may not come up with the research, right? So this is a good way of thinking about, do we really want to target or need to target one of these groups? If you don't need to, then it's probably best to not click it. If you do, obviously you want to, and if you get too small of a number of programs that come up, then you would have to go back and research and maybe eliminate that. Special populations, as you can see, includes a wide variety of folks. I'm still scrolling down. Couples, families, homeless. We're not going to use this one either, but I wanted to make everyone aware that it exists for those of you who are dealing with special populations. And again, gender, information not included. Male, female, and transgender is included. Again, we're not specifying any type of gender for the example that we're using. Geographic locations, you can identify where you are, what kind of population you're dealing with by size. And here settings is one of the newly reviewed and one of the ones that we are concerned with. So I'm going to go with the traditional view here of classroom. Implementation, dissemination means are these materials available right now? So there's a lot of folks who are interested only in programs where the dissemination materials are available. Some programs don't have dissemination or implementation materials available, depends on the training. And we're going to go ahead and say, yeah, we want to have them both available, both dissemination and implementation. And then the outcome rating, of course, is the really important one, even if we're not clicking anything else, because we only want to choose those programs that we know will increase our chances of success. We're going to focus on effective, and we're going to focus on promising. And in the last video, we talked about the differences between those two. So having set all of our criteria, we're going to search, and I'm going to take you to the search page so that you can see what we've ended up with. So by designating, you can see we didn't really fill in a lot of those filters, but we ended up with 6 what they call newly reviewed programs and then 0 legacy programs. So what's important to keep in mind here is this description underneath. As of September 2015, SAMHSA changed their criteria for how they were reviewing programs. So programs that were reviewed prior to September 2015 are counted as legacy programs. Programs that obviously have been reviewed since are newly reviewed programs. And remember, we're looking at research that tries to identify, did the program work or not? You can see that we've hit on 6 reviewed programs. 0 of them have effective outcomes, so our best case scenario didn't happen when we did this search. Programs with promising outcomes, however, all 6 of them fall into that category, and that's denoted with the yellow check mark. And then programs with ineffective outcomes has a red circle with the X in it. Programs with inconclusive outcomes is 0. Now, some of you may be wondering, why do we have programs with ineffective outcomes when that was not one of our selection criteria, right? We could have chosen that, but we didn't. So we have to kind of go down a little bit further to figure out why that is. So let's look at the first easy example. Across ages, for example, is the title. Now, these titles are always going to be in alphabetical order, and you'll see that there are 3 general areas that the researchers found this program has an impact on. Those 3 are general functioning and well-being, general substance use, and then knowledge, attitudes, and beliefs about substance use. Over here is the program description, which is truncated. So to get a full program description, we're going to have to click onto across ages for the next page, and we'll do that in a moment. So we have promising outcomes then for across ages for these 3 areas. This is where we also may want to know what our risk factors are, because maybe attitudes and beliefs about substance use is one of the risk factors that we're trying to deal with within that age group. So we can also narrow down by risk factor by looking at this second column. Going to, for example, Lion's Quest skills for adolescents gives us a slightly different picture. You'll notice that there are 3 red X's here that say that they're ineffective outcomes. And what this means is that the researchers measured all of these concepts in the research. And for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of them, it turns out that there are promising outcomes for these 8 concepts. However, Lion's Quest skills for adolescents, according to the research, was ineffective if you were interested in alcohol use and disorders, tobacco use and disorders, or social competence. Those were 3 things that produced ineffective outcomes in testing Lions Quest skills for adolescents. So in deciding which programs you want to work with, it's important to know what are these concepts that are important to you, because, for example, maybe I'm not interested in addressing these last three, so Lions Quest skills for adolescents would still be on my list of something that I would use. So let's take a look at one of this is look at across ages, and what we'll do is we'll just click on so you know what that page looks like. So every program has one of these. Let's start over on the right hand side. A program snapshot basically gives us redundant information at the top that we already know we got from the last page, but it also gives us contact information both in terms of the program and dissemination implementation contact. Remember, we were looking for dissemination and implementation that was currently available. Sometimes the folks listed under program and dissemination implementation will be the same. Sometimes they won't be. In this case, Andrea Taylor is the contact person for both of those. And then it will list the filters that would apply to this program. What you may notice is that even though we didn't include race and ethnicity, this description includes all categories of race and ethnicity that it applies to. It also applies to other settings besides school and classroom, which we put in. It's specific to urban populations, so if you don't have an interest in that, you may want to look in a different direction, or at least talk to them first before you do that. And it also applies to 13 to 17-year-olds. So this program has effectiveness, or at least promising, from age 6 all the way through to 17 for these three areas. Over on the left, it includes a program description, which is usually a couple paragraphs, gives you a summary, and then to get more detailed evaluation findings by outcome, what they do is they take the research and offer basic information on the research, pointing out what the findings were and what the measurements were. Sample description is here under study evaluation methodology, along with below that the references that were used to show a promising approach. And then the last area for drop down here includes dissemination and implementation, and you'll notice that there are some dollar figures here. Cost of the training for 35 people is $3,000, tells you that up front, and then as we scroll down, it tells us more about the materials that are required. And as we're thinking about cost, if you were to call Dr. Taylor and ask about the program, one of the things you would want to ask about is training for any staff, because there's probably a cost involved in that, either on-site for them or they will come to you. You probably want to ask about startup, because sometimes the costs for startup are different than they are for implementation, right? So you want to make sure that you cover all of those costs. And by doing that, hopefully we can at least narrow our list to a handful of programs that match the criteria that we need, so that we can do some follow-up phone calls, tell them about the population that we're interested in, the behavior we're trying to change, ask them about their successes in that area, and ask them about their program costs. And don't forget also about the amount of time. How often are the trainings held, and how long does it take to get somebody up to speed, because we want to be sure that we can meet timelines for whatever our goals are. So that's about it for going through the NREPP. All right, so hopefully you found that video useful. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to receive updates for new videos. If you have any questions, please leave them below, comments, or email me, wgeary@globalevaluationsolutions.com. I know the prevention work can get a little crazy, but don't forget the immortal words of the Eagles, who sang, "Take it easy, don't let the sound of your own wheels drive you crazy." Okay, bye-bye, everybody.